I am intentional.
I will plot and choose my course.
I will not wait to be blown from place to place.
I will do more than just react.
I will choose who I want to be and work to make that a reality.
I am wholehearted.
I will interact with the world from a place of worthiness, knowing my identity.
I will work to be able to feel, understand, and express my emotions.
I will allow my true self to be known.
I will leave my heart open to connect with others in a wholehearted way.
I am a man.
I have the responsibility to provide for my family, both temporally and spiritually.
I will use my special gifts to be able to make the world a better place.
I will protect and defend the vulnerable.
I will stand up when others sit down.
I will engage with others of like mind to strengthen and lift one another.
I am an intentionally wholehearted man. I choose to live by choice, not by chance. To be motivated, not manipulated. To be useful, not used. To make changes, not excuses. To excel, not to compete. I choose self-esteem, not self-pity. I choose to listen to my inner voice, not the random opinion of others. I choose to do things you won't, so I can do things you can't. I wanted to start this episode with this saying, this quote that I found early in my recovery journey. It became so important to me because one of the things I found is that we have to be intentional in all that we do. Too often we let things happen to us. Too often we let the world push us around. We just sort of end up in places never knowing exactly how we got there or why we're there. This can be in our marriages. This can be in our work. And so we really need to be intentional about who we are. Something I've been thinking about is men who are not focused are like knights who are just fighting in any direction. They end up causing damage to those around them. If we are not oriented in the fight and moving towards the enemy, we are a liability to our own side. Are we focused and working to become, or are we reactionarily swinging at every move or noise? Do we have the discernment to understand our battles? There is a saying that hurt people hurt people. If we do not know how to address and deal with our own hurts and battles, we can easily hurt those around us. So, what are some steps that we can take to help ourselves be more intentional? The first one is knowing what we want. As I was preparing for this podcast, I remembered a scene from Runaway Bride where she is being asked what type of eggs she likes. And it comes out that with one boyfriend, she had liked her eggs fried. With another boyfriend, she had liked them scrambled. With another boyfriend, it was over easy. The whole thing is that she didn't even know what she wanted. It's also interesting to me that this was a very small little clip in the movie. As a matter of fact, I had a hard time even finding it. But to me, it had made such an impact that I didn't know what I really wanted a lot of the time. Do we even know what we want? So one of the questions that we need to start off with is, do we know what we value? And what are values? Your values are the things that you believe are important in the way you live and work. You should determine your priorities, and deep down, they're probably the measures you use to tell if your life is turning out the way you want it to. When the things that you do and the way you behave match your values, life is usually good. You're satisfied and content. But when these don't align with your personal values, that's when things feel wrong. This can be a real source of unhappiness. So, one of the first things we need to do is to know what our values are. We need to understand what those values are and be able to articulate what we really want to be. So that's the first step, knowing what we want and knowing what our values are. The next thing is choosing what we want to be and choosing to live our values, not just going with the flow. So a couple of questions on this is, have you chosen your spouse? I've met more than a few men who did not choose their wife. She was just the person who said yes. This can leave them half looking for someone else. Have you chosen your profession, or is it just what happened to you? How many people hate what they do every day, but just feel stuck as that is the only option? This is just where I am. Are you active in your own life? One of my clients grew up believing that he had to be the easy child. This left him always looking for what other people wanted him to be, always people pleasing, never knowing what he really wanted to be. As a matter of fact, there's a book about this called No More Mr. Nice Guy. It's about always being agreeable, always being there, but often resenting every minute of it, chafing under it. If you have not chosen what you want to be, you end up being blown around by everything that's going on in your life. So often we just end up, well, this is where I am, instead of actually choosing where we want to be. I want to put in this piece right here, though. If you have not chosen your spouse or the direction of your life, choose them now. Get rid of the waffling and indecision. All it does is lead to hurt and pain for you and all those around you. So, once you've decided on where you want to be, you've made the choice, then the next thing we need to do is plot our direction and plot our course. We have to be constantly working on becoming, and we have to constantly maintain our course. What are we intentionally becoming? We have to be intentional about our direction. There was a study that was performed quite a few times about people trying to walk a straight line. They were put them in the woods and ask them to go straight in a direction. What they found is that time after time after time, all of the participants ended up walking in a circle. As much as they thought they were walking in a straight line, they ended up walking in a circle. Why is this? Not quite sure. But the point about this is that we need guideposts. We need a compass or something to be guiding us. We need a North Star. Because if we don't, we will end up walking in circles and never getting or making any progress towards our destination. So what are some of the guideposts that we can use? Some that many have found very helpful are things like the scriptures, the Holy Ghost, focusing on our values, finding people who we want to be like and emulating them, finding guides. Wholeheartedness does not just happen. And the shift from a closed, shut down heart to a whole, open, and engaged heart requires intentional work repeated consistently over time. We regularly have to check our course as well as our progress along the path. If we don't know where we are, it's very hard to get where we want to be. And we need to keep track of how our progress is going and regularly check in to make sure that we are on the path. Just a few degrees off over time can lead us to a very different destination than we want to get to. After we have set our course and we have our guides in place, then the next step is to regularly recommit ourselves to reaching our destination. It can be so easy to stop and go, man, I've come far enough. This is a good place. I'm happy here. But we don't get to where we really wanted to be. We can become overwhelmed and feel that the path is too hard. There's just too many hills. Maybe I should just sit down and quit right here. We must regularly recommit to our final destination. It might take longer than we thought, but if we continually recommit to where we want to be, we can get there. Recommitting and being intentional about those choices day after day is what leads us to an engaged, meaningful life. And it leads to us finding joy in the journey as we recommit each day to our choice. Another thing here is to be active and intentional early. We need to stand up for the things that we believe. One of the things that was a real issue for me is when I didn't feel heard. I would shut down and feel like nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. We need to be active and make sure we are being heard so that we don't get ourselves stuck in that place of not being able to progress. And we need to make sure that we are not letting ourselves feel like a victim and being shut down that way. Another piece of this being intentional is how often do we think about what we are thinking about? How often are we thinking about the doubts that are creeping in, the fears that are overwhelming us, the apprehension, the anxiety, any resentments that are coming in? What I have seen too often in myself is that I don't think about those things. I just let them brew. I don't even recognize that I'm thinking about them in the back of my mind. We need to take active steps and intentionally think about what we're thinking about regularly so that these things do not overwhelm us. We need to stop them in their tracks and do something about them versus letting them continually build up in the back of our minds. Couple things here at the end of this is I really want to focus on one thing here, is that not choosing is a choice. I see so many people who don't make a choice. They're given an option to choose something and they just let things happen to them. This can often leave feeling like a victim, feeling shut down, and feeling like something is always happening to us. We have to own the fact that we chose not to choose and not get angry and frustrated when things do not meet our expectations. And that brings up something about expectations. Brene Brown talks about expectations stealing joy, and that they are most often not really based in reality. She says expectations are like a movie that we have in our head. It's perfect. Everything is working out exactly right in our expectations. This is what it's going to be. The problem is that all of those around us don't have the script, and they keep screwing up their lines. This is what happens when we have expectations of other people. When we do not properly express those expectations or what we want to happen, they aren't going to happen, and we end up feeling like a victim. Another thing is to recognize and clear out resentments. We need to regularly and intentionally recognize any resentments that are building up in ourselves, and resentments towards those around us. When we build up resentment, it builds up walls between us and being able to connect with others. We need to remove those resentments, especially with those who are close to us and who we care most about. To wrap up, the first thing we need to do to be fully intentional is to know what we want and know what we value. The next is choosing what we want to be and choosing to live those values. The next is plotting our course and then regularly checking to make sure that we are maintaining and staying on course, as well as maintaining our progress along the path. So often we can feel like we're stuck and haven't moved. But when we have guideposts, we can maintain and double check our progress and see how far we've moved. The next is regularly recommitting to our destination, regularly recommitting to our choices, recommitting to our wife, recommitting to our family, recommitting to all of the things that we value most. Because as one person once said, all commitment wanes and eventually dies. We have to be regularly recommitting. The next is being active and intentional early on in the process, and then recognizing what we are thinking about regularly so that we do not get overwhelmed. I hope that we can all be intentional. Being intentional is one of the most important things to be able to ultimately be able to get to where we want to be. It makes the journey better. And it's a very large part of being an intentionally wholehearted man. Please like, share, and help others to find this podcast, and especially if it's helping you. See you next time on the Intentionally Wholehearted Man.